At the start of the movie, we're introduced to the protagonist, Nandan Kumar, a blue-collar worker who is a quintessential common man caught between his limited means and his unlimited needs. He's going through a difficult time pulling his family out of the financial crunch. His son's demands never end, and his wife Lata has to reckon with running a home that is always low on supplies. Nandan repairs machines at a printing press on his way back from work one night. However, little did he know that his life is about to take a dramatic turn. Nandan stumbles upon a bright red suitcase full of wads of 2,000 rupee notes. Taken aback, he contemplates for a while, but eventually decides to keep the bag. Unbeknownst to him, the suitcase belongs to a manipulative politician minister, Patil, and it is destined for the address of another malfeasance politician. Rewind to a few days ago. Jamil, a local gangster, is shot by two unknown gangsters. We learn that Jamil was a henchman of Bala Rathore, a mafia don. The scene then shifts to Bala, who is watching TV at his bungalow. Bala draws inspiration from the world of animals that he watches obsessively on Nat Geo. While he's observing the animals on TV, he comments that the Mumbai underworld is like a jungle. There's every kind of animal lurking around the city. For him to survive, he has to learn the tricks of survival from the creatures of the wild. His two henchmen, Rajan and Graduate, who worship him, stand beside their boss and affirm every statement that he has to say. Bala insists they too subscribe to the channel and keep tabs on the invaluable knowledge the wildlife has to offer. However, the two henchmen have news for their boss. They inform Bala that Jamil was attacked by Omar's men. Omar is another local goon, and also Bala's archenemy. Rajan insists they go after Omar, but Bala discloses that he's protected by the infamous politician Patil. So he wants to wait for the right moment to strike his nemesis. Meanwhile, we learn that it wasn't Omar who gave the orders to go after Jamil, but his brother-in-law Abdul. During Omar's confrontation with his brother-in-law, we learn that Abdul always makes bad decisions in his life. Now he's worried since Bala will surely come after them. In the next scene, we see the manipulative politician Patil talking over the phone with his superior Tripathi. The latter wants Patil to transfer 100 million rupees and a file containing evidence of widespread embezzlement to a location. Meanwhile, Nandan is visited by his old neighbor Ram Lal, who informs him that he's going away to his village for a couple of days. The old man then hands over the house key to Nandan and leaves. Next, Patil summons Omar and his men and blackmails them into carrying out the task to do Tripathi's illegal work. Reluctantly, Omar's men agree, and they put the money in a red suitcase. In the next scene, Nandan goes to his office as usual. That day, his boss awards him with the Employee of the Month certification. He is then given night shifts for the next couple of days. Elsewhere, Bala learns about the lump sum money that his rival is about to transport. He wants his henchmen Rajan and Graduate to infiltrate Patil's plan and loot away the 100 million. In the meantime, Nandan continues to struggle with his minimum wage. Whenever his landlord shows up to collect rent money, he says he cannot pay at the moment. Because of this, he often gets into fights with his wife, Lata. Later that night, Nandan goes to his night shift duty while Rajan and Graduate follow Omar's car. The goons arrive at Patil's courtyard and retrieve the red suitcase along with a parcel. While transporting the money, Omar and his men are ambushed by Bala's goons. Hence, Omar and the gang hide the suitcase during the shootout, hoping to retrieve it later. After a while, the police also arrive and the two rival gangs quickly flee the scene. At the same time, we see Nandan returning from his night shift. He comes across the red suitcase by chance, and finding it full of money, decides to take it home. This is the initial scene of the movie. Back in the present, Nandan strolls the suitcase home. Since it's very heavy, he gets inside an auto. The driver asks suspicious questions to Nandan, but the latter brushes him off with wrong answers. Once he reaches home, Nandan is worried, thinking about where he can keep the suitcase safely. His wife interrupts him, asking what took him so long to return home that night. She is in the mood to be intimate, but Nandan is just too anxious about his recent fortune, so he shrugs her off with an excuse. Later that night, he remembers his old neighbor leaving his house key. Thus, Nandan decides to hide the red suitcase at Ram Lal's house, before taking out a stash of 2,000 rupees. Meanwhile, Patil lashes out at his men for losing the suitcase. Omar suspects that their rival Bala is behind it and decides to call him. The Mafia Don refuses the accusation, but he overhears Patil worrying about the parcel that contains important documents. Now, both gangs send their respective men to find the suitcase and the file at any cost. At his home, Nandan still cannot believe the fortune he's just been blessed with. He even starts talking with the suitcase, addressing it as his new friend. He's hopeful that from now on, his life will be an unending joyride. Back at Patil's, he is continuously threatened by his superior Tripathi. So he blackmails a policeman named Kolte and assigns him to retrieve the suitcase. Wasting no time, Kolte and his informant begin gathering information about the shootout and inspect the area. At the same time, Nandan is returning home from work when he sees the policeman checking the CCTV cameras. Fortunately, the cameras are not operational, so he returns home happily. In the following scenes, we see Nandan's life changing dramatically. He finally starts getting used to the cash and spends it more. Nandan provides his son with a plethora of gifts and also takes the family to a mall and for tasty Chinese meals. While watching a movie at the theater, Lata reveals to her husband that she's instructed a cleaner to clean their old neighbor's house. Worried, Nandan makes an excuse and storms off to Ram Lal's house, where the suitcase is. Meanwhile, Patil and Bala's goons continue to look for the suitcase. While they're at it, they realize that the officer Kolte has also become entangled in the case. Hence, Rajan is tasked with keeping an eye on him. Elsewhere, Nandan realizes that he should not keep the money altogether. So he removes some stashes from the suitcase, divides it into several packets, and hides them in different locations. He keeps one packet in his office drawer, another in his water tank, and so on. He then buys an oven for his wife and a new bag for his son. When Lata wonders where he got all the money from, Nandan says he got it from his new friend. He explains that he got all these things at a discounted price. The following day, Nandan has to attend an award function at his office, but he gets late when the water tap stops working in his bathroom. He then goes upstairs to check the tank, only to find that the stash of money has been blocking the water. Nandan quickly takes out the stashes and leaves them to dry on the roof. Before he can head out for work, his old neighbor, Ram Lal, arrives from his village and asks to return his house key. Realizing that the suitcase is still at Ram Lal's house, Nandan lies that he lost the key and diverts his old neighbor to forge a new one. While Ram Lal heads out to the key shop, Nandan sneaks into his house and recovers the suitcase. Later, upon reaching his workplace, Nandan finds that the award function has concluded and he couldn't attend it. He sadly returns home, only to find the neighbors celebrating the landlord's birthday. While they dance their hearts out, we see the stashes of money which Nandan had dried on the roof floating all over the place. Meanwhile, one CCTV camera becomes operational, allowing Kolte to see Nandan leaving the scene in an auto rickshaw. The police officer confronts the auto driver and finds out about the location where Nandan was dropped that fateful night. In the next scene, we see our lucky hero having a hard time keeping his money hidden from his neighbors and Lata. In an effort to spend his cash, he attempts to buy a luxurious apartment, only to find that they do not accept cash payments. At the same time, Kolte and his men arrive at the location where the auto driver had dropped off Nandan. The police begin their investigation by asking nearby banks if a suspicious man had come to deposit a lump sum of money. Back to our hero, Nandan goes to his bank to collect his Employee of the Month check. He curiously asks about a cash counting machine, but the cashiers laugh him off. Nandan adds that he has 2 sacks full of money at home. The cashiers look suspicious and report this to their boss. Paranoid, Nandan makes a scene and leaves. When Kolte is investigating at the same bank, the cashiers tell him about Nandan's suspicious behavior and provide him with his address. Immediately, Kolte arrives at Nandan's home, and at the same time, Lata also finds the hidden suitcase in the kitchen. Nandan tries to explain the situation to his wife, but the police officer barges in and interrupts them. Without any explanation, Kolte holds the family at gunpoint and demands the money back. Reluctantly, Nandan complies. The police officer then finds out about the packet in the office and takes Nandan to retrieve it. When Kolte is strolling the red suitcase towards his car, Rajan and Graduate arrive at the scene and take his photo. They then send the photo to their boss, and Bala and Patil join hands to kill Kolte and recover the money. Arriving at Nandan's office, Kolte waits outside with the suitcase, unaware that Bala's goons are right behind him. Nandan goes inside to find his drunk boss, who keeps on rambling about his personal life. This delays Nandan in retrieving the rest of his money for his office. Meanwhile, Kolte is ambushed by Bala's men. During their fight, however, Graduate dies and Kolte manages to escape. He somehow gets his hands on Patil's file and, realizing its importance, decides to blackmail him. Elsewhere at his office, Nandan is still held up by his drunk boss as he attempts to get the packet. Fed up, Kolte instructs him to come to a secret warehouse. Nandan manages to get there, but he gets caught up between the two gangs when Bala and Omar ambush the warehouse with their respective men. In the ensuing fight, Kolte urges them to come to an agreement so they can settle for a while. However, the police officer has a backup plan, where his informant suddenly arrives and starts shooting everyone. In the resulting shootout, Nandan is the only survivor. Not learning his lesson about greed, Nandan decides to take the money to the warehouse, family's life around for good. Nandan never gets to know the real owner of the suitcase, though. In the final scene of the movie, we learn that the contents of the mysterious file get leaked, dooming Patil's political career. He then retires to his village and takes up farming, but is quickly tracked down and murdered by Omar's men.